Let's talk a little bit about Larry Harris, because Larry
Yeah.
Harris did this interview with Monty Poole on NBC Sports Bay Area and Dalton Johnson. And, he said a number of interesting things at the end. He's basically said that the Warriors would try to add some veterans in free agency to round out the roster. He talked about how Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis, that, one of the things they loved is that they got to visit with both players in Chicago at the pre-draft camp, and that they were very impressive in the interview process. And that was a key part of the personnel evaluation. He also said he thought like both Trace Jackson Davis and Pajemski were strong enough to compete in the NBA, but may have to adjust to the NBA's pace of play and just how fast the whole game is.
Yeah.
But then he finished up by saying three really interesting things. He said that the Warriors, he's like, hey, I want the fans to know that the Warriors ownership, now he's touting his boss. So some people would say, this is throwaway comment. But he did say, hey, Joe Lacob is willing to pay a huge payroll. And he emphasized that. And then he added that the Warriors are likely to add payroll after July the 1st. And so that kind of made my ears perk up.
Hell
But what
yeah.
really made them perk up was when he said, there's gonna, he goes, what I really want the fans to know. And, this was a really interesting comment. He goes, there's going to be some changes, and change is sometimes scary. And the way he was talking about this team's they're obviously Steph Curry's going nowhere. It's well documented that Mark Stein had the report today, and we'll get to that in a minute, about Draymond Green. According to Mark Stein, that Draymond Green's likely to return to the Warriors at some point, that the two sides are working towards an agreement that would bring Draymond back. So assuming Draymond's back, and obviously Klay's back, and now you got Larry, and they've already moved Jordan Poole, and they've already moved Ryan Rollins and PBJ, and they're obviously moving. They're not bringing back DiVincenzo, and they're moving on, from Andre Iguodala, and they're keeping Kevon Looney. I think we all know that, how much Kerr loves Looney. But when Larry Harris says there's gonna be some, I want the fans to know there's gonna be some changes, and change is sometimes scary. And the way he said it made me think that Klay Thompson is going to get moved. And I guess he could have been referring to Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, but I think Larry's knows that those guys have just been here for such a short amount of time that the fans like them, but they're not in love with them. But the fans are in love with Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
And he's just absolutely like part of the family. He's part of the fabric of the Bay.
Yes, he is.
And so when he says there's going to be some changes, and change is sometimes scary, I read that as they're going to move Klay Thompson. And I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think they're going to move Klay Thompson. And I think he was referencing that and trying to almost prepare the fans to say that, hey, you know what? The ownership's willing to take on a huge payroll, and they're going to add payroll after July 1st. And you got Klay making $43 million. And I just feel like that's, Joe said earlier this year, outside of Steph, everybody's, potentially movable.
Yep.
And, and Draymond's not going anywhere. It doesn't sound like, he could go to Sacramento or wherever, but I think they're working on bringing Draymond back.
Yeah.
I think he was preparing us, without really saying it specifically, that, and I've got other reasons to believe, by the way, that there are going to be some moves after July 1st. And I think Klay Thompson's going to be on the move. What do you think?
It sounds like it. I mean, because you're right. I mean, the way he was expressing himself, the words that were used, I agree with you, man. It's this Dub Nation and the Bay Area community. I don't know if they're like that attached to Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, he's been here 2 years.
Right.
He hasn't been playing consistent heavy minutes. I don't know if you would need to really preface trading Kuminga or even Moody with with warning signs. So I'm with you. The way Larry Harris phrased that, it does sound a lot like if someone's going to move, it's going to be Klay Thompson. Now, look, you and I have talked about this a lot. That this offseason is going to reveal what kind of owner Joe Lacob truly is, because if you're a sentimental, I'm sorry, you're not going to trade Klay. I mean, he's a foundational piece. He's synonymous with this dynasty almost as much as Stephen Curry is. They're going to build a statue of him someday outside of Chase Center, but he's at a point in his career where if you keep him at this point, it is for sentimental reasons. Like, he is not a player who's worth 43 million. And based on the way he performed this last season, especially in the postseason, and the way the season went along, if you're counting on him to be a key part of your team, you're not going to win a championship. That is the harsh reality of this Warriors roster. Is Klay is no longer that guy. Like Frank Red on your show, when we've had these discussions, talks about how Klay isn't going to get less than 30 million or shouldn't get less than 30 million. I think that's like double what he should be getting. Like, Klay Thompson to me is a 15 million a year player at most. He's such a liability now defensively. He can't create his own shot. His 2-point shooting is abysmal if you look at his numbers from close range last year. So he's a borderline liability. He's incredibly inflexible. Like, he's a really prideful individual. Like Steve Kerr, I used to kind of be disappointed in Kerr when he publicly scoffed at any suggestion of Klay coming off the bench. I mean, he did that with you in an interview. But now I'm realizing he does that because he doesn't want to upset Klay. Because Klay hearing from his coach, just the idea of coming off the bench would probably put him in a bad place mentally. And that's how fragile Klay is when it comes to, his pride and his role as a starter on this team. And so I'm with you, man. I love him. Like, it's not a fun subject to discuss, trading Klay Thompson. But if you still want to be a world championship contender, if your goal is still to get a 5th championship in 10 years, and especially a 5th ring for Steph, because when we're talking legacies, that's probably the most important thing. I don't think you're going to win that the way this salary cap is set up with the CBA. The only way they're upgrading this roster at this point is with veteran minimum contracts. And we just talked about the names that you can get. They're not blowing anyone out of the water, or you make trades. And Jonathan Kuminga makes $6 million next year. Moses Moody, I don't know what he makes. I have it in front of me. But whatever it is, like Moody, Moses, I thought I had it in front of me. I don't. But whatever it is, Moody makes what, like 5 million, 3 million? I forgot what it is. You're not going to.
He makes 3.9 next year.
Okay, 3.9. So collectively, you're talking about 10 million that you could trade between Kuminga and Moody. And so you can get someone back who makes 12, 13 million at the most. And I don't know anyone out there who makes that amount of money who can be a game changer. Now, when you throw Klay Thompson's contract in there, which is $43 million, and you're looking at the names that you can get back for that kind of money, now you're talking. Now you're talking about individuals that could be legitimate game changers, who can legitimately make the Warriors a real contender who can challenge Denver, because Denver's at the top right now, man. They're the ones that you got to look up to. And we've talked about bigs in the past. We've talked about Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, well, I mean, the guys that match up: Karl Anthony Towns, Pascal Siakam in Toronto, and then in Clipperland, Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. I mean, of those 4 guys, Leonard, Kawhi, Siakam, and Cat, who do you want? If it was Kuminga and Klay, some package deal.
I would take Kawhi if if Kawhi can be healthy. I guess that's the thing. If we're getting
there's no E on the end, no E, just Kawhi. Seriously, he's not a Kawhi. He's a Kawhi.
Or Kawhi, Kawhi Leonard.
Just Kawhi Leonard.
But I'm saying, like, I don't know if we're gonna get him as a healthy Kawhi. So you don't add the E at the end. It's just Kawhi.
No, just Kawhi Leonard.
Okay. Kawhi Leonard is one of the greatest players in the history of this game. If you can get a healthy version of him, of course that's who I'm going with. But I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
I think Siakam. I'm a Siakam head. I like Siakam.
I like him a lot. I would not complain at all. And the thing is, I used to think that Karl Anthony Towns would have been a fantastic option. I still do. But like 2 weeks ago, Draymond Green on his podcast ridiculed Karl Anthony Towns, or wasn't on his podcast, it was Twitter. I'm sorry. Cause so Karl Anthony Towns was on Patrick Beverley's podcast. And on the podcast, Kat said that, quote, when my time's up and I retire, there's going to be people who are going to say that I changed the game. Draymond Green went on Twitter, and this was June 14th. So this is like 11 days ago. And Draymond Green said, quote, I, Pat Bev, when people come on your show, they change the game. And with a bunch of like emojis, like kind of in shock. I'm looking forward to it, man. So he's mocking Karl Anthony Towns publicly. And I don't think that's the first time he's really ridiculed Karl Anthony Towns. And that kind of tells me that I don't think Cat's coming here. If that, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I mean, do you think he's coming after something like that? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, he's definitely a big man who can shoot the ball. It's funny
Yes.
that Green would rip him because in some ways he's the perfect guy to play with Green.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So
because Green's going to do all the dirty work, and Cat can camp on the perimeter and be the special, big man with range offensively that he is. So, but Siakam would be intriguing to me, and if you threw in Kuminga, that would be interesting. One other rumor, or two other rumors that I saw. Tell me what you think of these two names. There's one online right now that talks about Kuminga and Moody in a deal for Jared Allen. I'm not sure if that I don't think that works. I think you'd have to throw in somebody else.
the Cavaliers,
with the
center?
Cavaliers.
Yeah.
And the other one I saw was Kuminga and Moody to the Hawks for Onyeka Okongwu.
Yeah. Now, honestly, man, like the trade you and I were talking before we started recording about hypothetical trades. The one that would excite me the most, and in fact, I'll get the trade machine going right now to see if it actually will work, is getting the Raptors involved. Like the Raptors are about to go into a rebuild, which is why Pascal Siakam is available. I love Pascal Siakam on a side note. Like he is a legitimate big. He can fit with the Warriors. He's a great shooter. He's a great defender.
37.8 on the cap for next year. So it would have to be Siakam and something for Klay of around $5 million. Or it would have to be, if it was Klay and Kuminga, it would have to be Siakam and something bigger, maybe Thaddeus Young, maybe Boucher. I know the Warrior fans want OG Anunoby in the worst way, but that's 27 for Siakam and 18.8 or 18.6 for OG.
Right, but what I'm wondering is if you make the trade where you're trading Klay, you're trading Moses Moody, and you're trading Jonathan Kuminga, can you get back Pascal Siakam and also get OG Anunoby? And that's what
I think you could. I think that would work.
And I'm putting it in the machine right now. Let's see if this works here. So I'm gonna hit.
Would you make that trade? Would you try? I think I'd do that trade.
Success. You could do it. It would work. So that's the trade I would go for. Klay Thompson, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. You'd probably have to throw in 2 first-round picks. Maybe make them like top 4 protected, something like that. But you could get back Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby. And if that's the trade, sign me up. Now, what do
you think if they made that trade with what they've already done without knowing how they'd round out the roster? Are they going to run with Denver?
Easily. I would call them the favorites. If they made that trade, because look at their starting lineup right now. Like if you made that trade, your starting 5 is what? Is Steph, Wiggins, Anunoby, Draymond Green, Pascal Siakam. That's your 5. Now you have Looney and Chris Paul on your bench. Now you have Trace. What's
Trace
up?
Jackson. Pajemski.
Pajemski. And then that's also where you're going to be starting to like recruit free agents for veteran minimum deals. And you're suddenly looking at very different type players, right? Now you're looking at like wings, you're looking at guards. Point is, if they make that trade, 100% of the favorites. I think they'll wipe the floor on the Nuggets. In all honesty, I really do. I feel great about the Warriors if they did that. What do you think? I mean,
I do. I mean, I think, in a lot of ways, I mean, first of all, it'd be very popular, right? It'd be, even though people love Klay, getting back Siakam and Anunoby would
Huge.
be, very, very popular.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, I definitely got the sense from listening to Larry Harris that he was prepping us for Klay Thompson's moving in July, kind of a message.
And just to
I
add to that, like I'm really lucky to have a couple of insiders who are phenomenal sources of information. Sometimes they just tell me what they're hearing. Sometimes they tell me like legitimate pieces of information. This is not information that's like I recommend aggregating. I'm not reporting anything saying this, but I've been hearing from multiple sources in that building that there will be a big trade. Like all indications are there's going to be a big move. That Larry Harris attribution does not surprise me. The question is who is going to be involved. Look, that would be earth shattering if Klay moved. I mean, it would be. So but if you're getting Siakam and Anunoby back, that would certainly quell whatever anger or disappointment might be going on in Dub Nation land. That would be a phenomenal trade, man. Yeah, the Warriors are favorites to win the title if they make that trade. I would easily say that. Yeah.